Hello and welcome to KingDante's Civilization 6 YouTube channel. Today I'm going to discuss how to choose your capital settlement location. So as you see, I've just set it up with a generic civ that doesn't really depend upon a specific location. That should give the best idea of where you can settle. And I'm setting a mortal difficulty, standard speed, fractal, so I don't really know whether it's a Pangea map or it has continents. And then a small map size, because that's generally what I play on for the best playability. So as I start gaming, this is the Rise and Fall expansion, so there's some additional considerations that you might want to make in Rise and Fall versus the original game, but not a huge amount. They're relatively the same, but just to give you an idea, I am playing on the Civilization 6 Rise and Fall expansion fairly shortly after it came out. So once this gets loaded here, we can discuss what we have loaded up to kind of figure out where we want our capital location to be. Okay, let's begin. Okay, so first thing, you want to make sure that you have all your map options showing. You want to see the yield icons, and just make sure that you can see the resources. It's important to be able to see resources and yields to get a good idea. So again, this is a fractal map. I like playing on fractal whenever I play against computers because it's a little more unpredictable, and kind of just gives you an idea where you have less of an idea of what to do immediately. So my first thought is that this whole area looks very good. So what you're looking for in a capital is you want to make sure that you have access to a few things. You want fresh water, if at all possible, just like any city. And so let's pull up the lens for settler, and that'll show you water. So if you see up here in the top left-hand corner, you have fresh water is this nice green color, bright green color, and then that's going to give you +3 housing, and then your coastal water is +1 housing, which is this lighter green color. And so you want to prefer this dark green color because you get +3 housing, and you get +1 housing if you're just on the coast. And if you happen to be on the coast with freshwater, it's going to get the freshwater bonus. It doesn't stack, so you're not going to get +4. You're just going to get +3 housing for being in freshwater. And the freshwater is coming from these river deltas. So you can see a river here, and every tile next to it is giving you the freshwater. So you have a river delta here, you have a river delta here, and you see across this little coastal range, there's a river delta across the way. So first thing is that all else equal, you want fresh water. So our settler is sitting on fresh water as it is, and we know that there's some fresh water here and up into this area. So those are going to be our first choices in terms of wanting fresh water. So that's the first aspect, is fresh water. The next thing you want to look to is that all else equal, you would prefer to settle on a hill. And the reason for that is that when you settle on a hill, your city starts with an additional production than if you didn't settle on a hill. So although these both start as 1 food, 2 production, when you don't have a city on them, here, so this tile is 1 food, 2 production, and 1 food, 2 production, because you don't have the city on them. However, if you settle the city here, you're going to start with an additional production than if you settled on a city here. You'd have 2 production instead of 1 production. Because on here, there's nothing that would go away. But if you settled here, one of this production is coming from the forest. So when you were settled, though, the forest would go away, and you'd have 2 food, 1 production. 2 food, because your capital always has at least 2 food. And 1 production because your capital always has at least 1 production. So preferably, if we're looking between these 3 spots, which all have fresh water, then you're going to see, okay, well, this spot's nice and this spot's nice because they have hills, and this spot doesn't have hills. So you're going to prefer one of these 2. In addition, a reason not to want this tile as much is because you'd be just eliminating a forest. So forests are good for chopping, and they also provide extra production later. But chopping forests can give a big boost of production early in the game, or even in the middle or late game, that can be used to complete districts or buildings or wonders, and that big boost could really help you move along faster. So again, we had fresh water, and now we have hills. You're going to prefer hills. And the other reason you prefer hills is not only the production, you have additional defense. So if you're on a hill, you have additional defense. So if your city's on a hill, it makes it easier to defend. Normally with the capital, this isn't critical, because you're going to want to have buffer cities around you. But as you go higher in difficulty in single player or in multiplayer, your capital can actually become under attack. In multiplayer, because people are trying to take your capital to win a domination victory, or in single player, because at high immortal and deity difficulties, you're going to be facing large armies relatively quickly, and they could be attacking your capital before you've had a chance to found a large number of other cities. So defense is important, but really what you're looking for is that production, because the extra production you might have, instead of 3 production to start the game, you could have 4 production, and that's 33% more, which can be a huge steamroller early in the game to really pump out additional units. So we've addressed freshwater and we've addressed hills. The other aspect you're going to look for is resources. So if we're looking at these resources, we can see that you have a lot of wheat or nearby. So that's going to be a lot of food. So you have at least these 4 wheat, 5 wheat if you count this one way over here, within this spot. This is fairly good. You have a lot of wheat that are giving you this bonus food. So you're going to be able to improve these, have a lot of food. And then you have the horses over here, which is going to be really important because early cavalry can make a huge military difference. And you also have access to a lot of water around. So you could use this as, if you get a harbor up with a lighthouse, you'll have a lot of food coming from the surrounding area. One of the biggest downsides that I see with this capital is you don't have a lot of production. So you have these forests, but if you chop them, you're not going to have the production. Because, if you had no forest here, this is going to be 1 food, 1 production, 1 food, 1 production, 1 food, 1 production. And you only have 2 hills. So you could chop this and still produce it, and you would still put a mine on it, so you could have 2 mines here for this city. That's a really low production city overall. Not ideal. But you also don't see a lot of other things. So one of the key aspects, besides just your visual of resources, although one of the things that's surprising here is I don't really see luxury resources. So I probably have a luxury resources in the sea, because normally you would have 2 luxuries within 3 tiles of your starting location, which is probably one benefit to always consider just settling in place, is they're usually fairly balanced settlement locations. So my guess is that I probably have a luxury in the water here, because I don't see any land luxuries in range, and so that's just something that I'm considering here. But what you're trying to do then is determine, okay, there's always the opportunity cost that if you move, you're wasting turns. And those turns can be very valuable at the beginning of the game because you're trying to find city-states, you're trying to produce scouts, you're trying to lock down initial area. And every turn that you move your city, you're not producing any culture, not producing any science, and that's going to slow you down throughout the whole rest of the game. So you want to minimize at all possible the number of movements that you take. Sometimes in bad city spots, it's going to be wanted to move. The nice thing is that you've already started on a hill. So if I didn't start on a hill, let's say I started on this forest, I might be encouraged to come and settle on this hill instead of that forest, because it would eliminate my forest, which I wouldn't get any benefit for chopping, and I'd then get the hill bonus all at once. And so I'm gaining a hill where I would settle, and I'm not really losing anything. I'm still getting fresh water. So in that sense, it might be worth moving the 1 turn over to this hill to get the benefit of the hill. But since I'm already on the hill, I don't want to move there necessarily. So what I'm considering is, okay, do I want to be here, or do I want to move somewhere in this area? Also near fresh water, because I'm on fresh water. So like if I was here and I wasn't on fresh water with this same setup, I'd probably want to move to this hill to get fresh water, move to this forest to get fresh water, because that additional housing can make a huge difference in your game and how effective you are early in the game. So far, I'm saying that this is really a good spot where I want to be, because I have a hill, I have fresh water, and I have a decent number of resources kind of production limited later in the game, but as long as I leave some of these here, I have some production here. But for now, this is a good spot. So what you're then trying to do is like, okay, you've determined that either you're in a good spot here or not. But what you need to do is gather information. So you always start with an additional unit. Most civs starts with a warrior, some have a scout. And you want to get the most information possible from this move because you're trying to determine, do I settle in place or am I willing to move? And you need to be able to determine that from purely on the movement of your warrior. Now, if your settlement is just absolutely terrible, you might also use your settler to gain some of that information, but you really don't want to because if you move in the wrong direction, now you've wasted additional turns trying to gather information. So what we need to do is we need to determine, is this the best spot I can do in this area for my capital, or is there one that's better? So I really have three choices with this warrior. I can move down towards the horses, because again, you have two movement. So you can move down towards the horses to gather information, which would let me know, okay, is there a luxury over here? But really, you're going towards the ocean, and you don't really want to go towards the ocean for the most part, because most likely there's more ocean. So it's going to be relatively unlikely that I'm going to come to these horses and I'm going to see like a Great Barrier Reef, or I'm going to see something that's just amazing right over here, where by settling near these horses or on these horses for some reason, I'm going to prefer that. No, instead what you're going to want to do is, so let's eliminate that choice because there's not as much information to be gathered. We can assume there's probably a luxury over here, but it really doesn't make a difference because there's luxuries in the area. We know there should be. So the main goal is to figure out, okay, do I want to come over this way or do I want to go this way? Luckily, they share a joint movement spot, so I don't have to decide independently. I can move one spot forward and then decide again. My instinct is I want to go over here because this has the water, but it looks like there might be water over here too. So let's go one spot and then decide if I want to go which way I want to go for the next spot. Okay. So this is useful to see. We've come forward, we've revealed this next layer of spots. I have an additional wheat over here, but the river ends. And so we now know that my settler, if it wanted to go this way, needs to go up here. Because I don't want to settle on the coast if I already have fresh water. So the only other option would be settling on fresh water again. And so instead of going here and seeing what's over here, there might be good stuff, I don't know. But what I want to know is my settler in the best reasonable location? And so I'm going to use my next move to scout out just the water. If this water had continued, then maybe I would have gone this way because I'd already seen a decent amount of water over here. But since the water doesn't continue, I know that I need to come this direction. And that's going to be my better spot for exploring in this map. So I'm going to go up one more. Okay, so we have some additional wheat. And we have, one more hills. One key aspect here is you don't see a lot of extra hills. So, if I just wanted to count what's available, let's say I have my settler here and probably one of the other good spots is this tile or this tile. Well, I have 1, 2 hills here. And in my current one, I have 1, 2 hills here. And then over here, I wouldn't get to settle on a hill. So my takeaway for this one is that the best settlement spot for my civ is right where I am. I'm in the correct spot as it is. So that's useful for me to understand because I know that my baseline should always be settle in place. What you're trying to do is prove whether or not to settle in place. So you're looking for reasons that your current settlement sucks. So first thing we looked at was we looked to see, do I have fresh water? I do have fresh water. So my instinct is then, okay, stay in place. So now I'm trying to see if I didn't have fresh water, maybe I'd want to find fresh water for my capital. Okay, so I have fresh water. Second thing is, okay, do I have a hill? I do have a hill. So again, it sounds more like settle in place. If I didn't have a hill, it might be worth moving one spot to a hill. What you don't want to do is move, 2 or 3 or 4 turns. Because what you're going to have to do is like, if I were to move over here, you're going to take one turn over here, a second turn to move there, and a third turn to settle. So it's going to be 3 turns that I've spent without that city and without that production. If at all possible, you want to do like one move and then settle. If you're doing much more than one move and then settling, like let's say if I was here and I needed it here, it can be worth it because then I'm, but that's really the extent. Is like, so if I was started here doing one move because I couldn't move here, and then 2 move on, and then 3 move settle, that's really what you should do. Never take more than 2 turns moving your settler to get a better spot, because it's just so much time. I mean, the benefit of getting a hill, that extra production, is over the course of 3 turns. I mean, you're talking about a huge difference now just to get that extra amount. Well, everyone else has gotten, an additional 12 production ahead of you. It's going to take 12 turns to make that back up. The advantage of a hill is almost lost at that point. But what we have here is we have hill, we have fresh water, and there's no significant difference in the production or food capability of moving versus staying. So it almost seems better to stay. But you need a significant benefit from moving to override the opportunity cost of not having a city. So you should always assume that where you're settling in place is good to start, but there's multiple places here where I would have preferred to move if I could. So if I had started here, I probably would have liked to settle there. Same here, because I have too much water, so I want more land and I come over here. But if I started over here or here and I found this area, I probably wouldn't move because it's going to take too many turns. Take 1 turn to cross the water, 2 turns to come over here, 3 on there, and then 4 to settle. Those 4 turns are not worth it. So choosing between this area and this area, I can't really see much benefit if I started over here to come here. And for the same reason, if I see here, there's no benefit to go over there. So you're trying to just find a good enough spot, because if I like this area, I can always put my next city there. So I've decided this is where it is, and you also gain some additional benefit when you see the city, but for the most part, we're going to settle right here. And as you can see, I immediately found a luxury resource. As I guessed, the luxury is right beyond my city borders. And you can see that I have 2 food and 2 production here in my starting city. So this is a really good starting city, actually. I'll probably play this game a little bit longer and do, a first 50 turns or first 30 turns game. We'll just see. But anyway, thank you for joining us on my YouTube channel. This is KingDante's YouTube channel, and please subscribe if you want further videos, and join me again next time. Thank you.